then I don't know how I
That's
can.
it. We're live and welcome everyone to Mud Flood was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. RJ, we could have had a show last night. I forgot a whole day or added a day or something, but I have these two papers due. So, and I'm freaking out because I had my midterm art project, but it looks great. And so I finished my, it's like I finished this project, supposed to be 500, 3 pages, 500 words. I knock it out. It's 990 words. Is this too long? No, it's not too long. So I'm done with that one, and I realize, oh crap, it's Wednesday,
It
and I
was. No, now it's Thursday.
and I thought everything was due on Thursday, but it's due on Wednesday. It's due on Friday. So I actually had enough time, and I just did one of those things, man, where I went to like, man, I'm freaking out, and I even freaked out
Well,
to the vice president for no apparent reason. Anyway, I wanted to. So things
it's a
have
good
been,
feeling to be prepared,
yeah.
even if it's a day ahead of time. But what's that going to hurt?
Let's see what we got here. The more things, the hold on now. The more thing, the more
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
No, I
What?
tried to play on the word. The more same things not remain, the more I see things not remain the same while changing all around us makes me wonder if at any time things remained the same. What if people who never have heard that old saying, the more things change, the more they remain the same? I never have heard it said. So it must be another Mandela effect. That's the world I live in. That's the world I live in. It's another
Well, yeah.
Mandela.
When it comes to deceptions,
Yeah,
yeah,
I never heard of it. It must be the
still a
Mandela effect.
deception.
Oh my gosh. Never heard it. But my world at its end time as its end time prophet, a prophet that at age 67 finds himself in university, not looking for a job or even their education. I was coming here anyway to wait for the end of the world in a little over 20 years. I have a past rental problem history. So it was easier to get an academic scholarship and live in faculty housing at the university than it was to rent a very expensive 2 bedroom apartment like I live in right now. I was never for a lack of paying rent. It was other sinister reasons that my evictions caught up with me. But living in this 2 bedroom faculty apartment has been a blessing for sure, as that people can go back and look at the videos and what we've accomplished. Living here in a year, things have remained the same while changing. What have you not witnessed changing? My message, my witness, my faith in the Holy Scriptures. You've not seen that changing, nor will you ever. 8 months ago, I warned of a coming financial collapse of the United States because of infrastructure failure and insurance payments and the like. New hundreds of thousands now, hundreds of thousands are on their own in places like North Carolina. They have no business, no home, no phone, no friend opportunities to join in their social platform. What else, you ask? Well, I remember the Francis Scott Key Bridge being run into when the big old ship carrying all those containers, boom, and ran right into it. It was totally on purpose. That was a pretty big deal. That happened this year. That doesn't get talked about that much, but they shut that bridge down in Baltimore for a long time. I mean, I remember video after video of people pointing and screaming for over 10 minutes. That man has a gun and he's on the roof near where a former president was speaking. That's a big deal. And that kind of got swept under the rugs. And, it's just like, wait a minute. The Secret Service goes back to the Pinkertons and they're badasses and little boy, don't mess with them. And there were people pointing and saying, there's somebody on the roof. And then it turns out that that group by the fence, 10 out of those 30 had badges. They were just dressed like Trump supporters, but they were cops. And
Oh, it's kind of like J6, huh?
The bridge thing is infrastructure. The second one was political theater. That's the world we live in, RJ. That's all I got. Because this is going to be probably a short show. I think I only have one dealio to show Leo. How you doing, man?
Am I? Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. I feeling better.
We got a little fair use disclaimer here. I'm not sure, but we might show a video. What was this crazy thing here? I only got one screenshot. The report found brands such as BMW, Ford, Toyota, Tesla, Kia, Subaru would collect deeply personal data such as sexual activity, immigration status. This is your car company. Your race, your facial expressions. Wow, they must be doing that with the rear view mirror. Your weight, your health, your genetic information, where you drive, which they could potentially, which they do sell to third parties because they can't know enough about you, RJ. Cold fusion. Breaking it down, everybody. He was breaking it down, doobie doo, down, down. I kept waiting for it to click on here. Wow. What's going on
here in the Western Panhandle, and then we're going to look for that shot we were just looking at. We move one frame, boom, here's those weird waves that come off. We see
the weird waves, RJ?
That the storm is producing.
Something.
The surface wave.
Yeah, kind of weird.
This a lot underneath heavy systems, especially when they're approaching the coastlines. Now we're going to look for our beam here. We're going to see it pretty well. It's right about there. So
it's going to Asheville, North Carolina. It's pointing at Asheville, I think.
This is pretty odd. I want to know what's going on here.
Oh, you mean like the 1-2 punch?
Something.
Like it's coming from Florida itself, so it's coming up into this direction. This one is certainly coming down from Georgia into Florida, almost to where we're seeing landfall. If we backtrack a little bit, you can see here the momentum wants to bring this storm up and then kind of right into this area here. Maybe a little north, but that's what we're seeing. But take a look at these anomalies every couple frames, specifically that one we are looking at. There's another big one right there. It's kind of a sweeper. It's got multiple beams and it sweeps left to right. And now watch as we approach. You're going to see a bunch of little ones, and then we're going to see our landfall beam. That's the only thing I can think of naming.
That one picture on the left there still shows the X marking the spot, everybody. I just keep your eye. It's going to refocus here.
It's on track. Yeah.
Right there. So let's see how close this actually gets to where landfall takes place.
All right. So that
was Junkie. That was kind of cool, huh? Let's see how she breaks it in. This is the example of one of these beautiful women that she was just showing other people how to pick out the correct makeup and stuff, pick out the right makeup brushes.
Yep.
And then once her town caught on fire, she's just like, she changed the whole focus. Like, look, I don't care about trying to teach people how to age gracefully. This is all about, hey, man, they're trying to kill us. I appreciate that type of
See what they're doing out there?
Yeah, see what they're doing. Hey, man, stop trying to kill me.
Now there's something else kind of shooting out here underneath this layer of
That's
moisture
one, but
over the
there's another
southeast.
one
Looks
I
like it's
want you to
coming from
see.
either northern Florida or a radar tower in southern Georgia.
So this line's coming from a radar tower in southern Georgia.
But the main one right here, look at this big beam that shoots down
Wow,
right
it's
to
shooting
about
right
here.
out
That's
there.
where we're expecting
We saw
landfall,
that
give
one.
or take. So now we're going to zoom in and see
You
exactly
just have to get. He shows some of the smaller ones.
where this thing points to, because that is not your normal beam that you see coming from these radar. It's definitely coming from the state of Georgia, probably underneath this mess here. It's coming this way, and there's a cross of that other beam either coming from northern Florida or southern Georgia. All right, this is about as close as we're going to get. We're going to see one anomaly over here in the western panhandle, and then we're going to look for that shot we were just looking at. We move one frame, boom, here's those weird waves that come off. We see this a lot underneath heavy systems, especially when they're approaching the coastlines. Now we're going to look for our beam here. We're going to see it pretty well. It's right about there. So this is pretty odd. I want to know what's going on here. And there's our cross beam, again, looking like it's coming from Florida itself. So it's coming up into this direction. This one is certainly coming down from Georgia into Florida, almost to where we're seeing landfall. If we backtrack a little bit, you can see here the momentum wants to bring this storm up and then kind of right into this area here. Maybe a little north, but that's what we're seeing. But take a look at these anomalies every couple frames, specifically that one we are looking at. There's another big one right there. It's kind of a sweeper. It's got multiple beams and it sweeps left to right. And now watch as we approach. You're going to see a bunch
What are they doing? What are they sweeping for, RJ? So here,
days without basic services are turning dire.
Survival right now.
There's no gas to make it to stores. There's no stores open. It's cash only. The ATMs are down. But there's little babies that have nothing to drink. And we're going on 3-4 days now with no water.
It's not only months of recovery, it's years.
Gas remains scarce in the city, with lines sometimes stretching for blocks.
Now, there is one other looming issue that residents are facing here.
What is it?
For folks who did have food in refrigerators, in freezers, that's all been eaten at this point.
The New York Times saying how there are lithium mines, and actually right here, there is a Albemarle lithium mine similar to how they have in Chile. And here's a little bit of the plan. Now there's a lot to unplug. There's a lot to
that's a mud
go
flutter.
over regarding the plans, and I'll have Shane go into that because he's a lot more familiar with what these are. But you know, this is just this is an ongoing situation. So that's why I want to let as many people know what's going on. And FEMA has said that they are sending aid, they're airlifting supplies, but I don't have confirmation of that. This area is difficult to access because of the roads. Experience as having had a short-term rental, it is generally not a very profitable thing. What it does do,
She's tying it into like a type of like, well, Lahaina, where this town needed to be. In their mind, I think they're gonna try to rebuild it to be like, I don't know if you're familiar with how Austin, Texas is different than, it's much more liberal and free spirit, art centered than the rest of Texas. I think they have that in mind. Could be.
Well, that's partially attitude also. I mean, if that's going to get a priority, but yeah.
And study in
pine
Morocco, which is quite remarkable. They're building a world-class university town in the desert, in the Moroccan desert. But it turns out there are, I don't know, 30 or 40 institutes for advanced study in the world. And there are rules, and you have to follow those rules. Who would have guessed? You know, and the university, UM6P, a lot of their graduates who are the best and the brightest in Morocco, young people, guess what? They go to get more advanced degrees in France, in the United States, elsewhere, out of Morocco. And for that to work, the institution that granted their degree has to be accredited. I think there's a lot more pressure.
Basically, the takeaway on that, RJ, is that even in the middle of the desert of Morocco, you have to have your approved normalized education.
Oh, the webs we weave.
Oh, yes.
No crisis in physics, or at least no major crisis in physics, and then they'll cite engineering facts and not fundamental breakthroughs.
Well, you've just answered your question, I think, rather well. So I find it boring, frankly. I can't believe that nature doesn't have any more imagination. I can't believe that we, in the 1920s, found the fundamental theory of physical reality, quantum mechanics, and that's it. And it's all over from now on. If you extrapolate from the history of
That's what I say is that
Is it?
they claim to have done that, and time froze since the 20s, and they still keep selling.
Well,
the
you can't
fear
prove
of-
that wrong.
Yeah,
You know,
what we developed in the 1920s is the fear of mutual mass destruction, and we have to be afraid of that for the rest of our lives. A little bit more of this, Yahoo.
Islamic period, why did they translate texts from ancient Greek into Arabic, which then made their way into Europe, very often in translations from the Arabic, I believe. I'm not a historian. It's complicated. I don't know why there are periods of creativity. But I think that large centralized bureaucracies that control everything and control research are definitely not good for creativity. They may be good for technological innovation, although I think the universities are not the great innovators. I think it's
Man, I'll tell you what, RJ, I could have never realized, it's one thing to talk about, boy, the universities are bad, but to be in one and be a part of it, I've seen it firsthand. And now I notice more. What else happened to
live
this?
it. Yeah.
The new president of Yale, wasn't her name Gay? She got convicted. Well, proven to be a plagiarist and got her career advanced, probably because in my world of her sexual preference of other women and being black and being now you're qualified to be part of Yale if you didn't plagiarize everything from your history. And nobody knew that while you were advancing to the top. And then they just had the girl from Harvard that got a lot of well, she got fired. She got proven to be a plagiarizer and not the one that should have shown. Networking makes us feel dirty, and it got a lot of press. But now the one from Harvard, she's gone. She's embarrassed. She's disgraced. But they threw everything out of court after 1,300 pages from Harvard proving she's there. But the judge did allow that. It's possible that they're discriminating against her because she's a woman. So she can go
Well,
forward.
yeah, they get their 15 minutes of fame, I suppose.
And she'll be compensated good for the next, because the world's coming to an end. Sergio, really appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. The situation. Oh, I wanted to, while I was talking there, I was going to be doing this other thing.
Video just into our
in
newsroom
case
now as
in case
a
we
portion
need
of
a
the collapsed
reminder.
Francis Scott Key Bridge was demolished. You're looking at video. This took place just in the last 30 minutes near Baltimore. The demolition will help crews remove debris and eventually free the Dolly cargo ship. In March, you'll remember the Dolly went off course. It struck the bridge, killing 6 construction workers. The crew
went off course. Yeah, of course.
If the demolition works as planned, the Dolly could be returned to the port of Baltimore this week.
And why did the crew have to stay in confinement? And as far as we know, the crew still hasn't been released,
As NTSB investigators continue to look into what happened, what went wrong, we're getting a look at the moments leading up to that catastrophic collision. Fox 10's Troy Hayden breaks down the video frame by frame.
So some interesting things to see if you really break down this tape. It's a pretty amazing video that was taken when this terrible accident happened. So go ahead and take this full screen if you would. You can see the ship. I'm going to back it up just here. Look to the left part of your screen. You can see the ship coming in, and there are definitely lights on at the ship right here. You would think the ship had power at this point, and then all of a sudden the lights go off. The ship from this forward, I'm speeding it up for you here. does not appear to be steering at all. And there's one interesting thing I want you to look at, and that's right here. This, I believe, is right in the area where the exhaust from the ship's engines would come out, and you don't see any exhaust coming out at all. So the ship, again, light, then dark, and it does not appear to be steering. So now let's fast forward a little bit, and we'll go to this next piece of video. So here we go. The ship's lights are out. All of a sudden, they turn back on. So out.
You know, the computer says, oop, we need a final little adjustment, like somebody flying into the Twin Towers. And that's just speculation. That's just me. You know, boom, give it a little more power, turned it, you know, hard to the port. Port is your left, I think, you know, or right.
On. And then again, look right here. So here's that smokestack in that area. I'm going to get rid of that. Put it forward. Now look, all of a sudden, you start seeing exhaust or smoke coming out of that smokestack. Is this the point where the engines got turned back on or fired back up again? Lights on, lights on, exhaust coming out of the top of the ship. And it looks like the ship is really trying to steer. The tail end of the ship is kind of going out and trying to steer around that bridge. Unfortunately, as we all know,
this is how, you know, we were figuring it out frame by frame, and then it became too suspicious and you just didn't hear about it anymore. And in most people's mind, nobody thinks about the Francis Scott Key Bridge anymore.
No, at this point, it is not able to do that. So let's go to the impact.
That's like like talking about Building 7, you know.
Right, right. Everybody that cares about it has heard about it and cares about it. Everybody that, you know, pretends to care about those type of things,
ignoring it,
we're like, yeah, if it was a big deal, I'd still be talking about it. This isn't a big deal. This happened, people.
This is the starboard side of the bow connects right there with the pylons of the bridge, and you can see it's probably water and cement shooting out.
It's just
hits
for
and then
any road traffic that was familiar with using this, their alternate route is going to be affected now for a significant amount of time.
I would think, yeah. And I do want to emphasize again, there's no way, unless that would have boom, hit that, swing that tail out to the left, the front to the right, when the power, there's a cloud of smoke right there that supplied the turn. And we saw it, it would have skated right through there like one of those soccer goals when they shoot it sideways into the net. But it's good. Yeah. Hard right. Turn hard right.
220,000 tons fully loaded just took all that concrete out, and the bridge just comes right down. So again, one more time, coming in, it appears there's a light on the
it kind of seems like they don't show it in full motion because there's, you know, a lot of explosions going off of what they said were explosions.
Ship, but it hits that pylon, collapses this side of the bridge, then the second side of the bridge goes down. So again, a tragic accident in Baltimore. Obviously, that bridge needs to be rebuilt. So much work in that.
A lot of work going on there.
Any money being spent? Hemorrhaging?
You know what? The perfect time for the dock workers of the United States to go on strike. You know, they went on strike yesterday. All the dock workers are on strike.
Critical, yeah.
They don't, that means they're not unloading the boats that are coming in from China and India and Germany.
Well, either way, right? I mean, they don't load any, they don't unload any. They just don't do anything.
They go on strike. They walk the picket line. They demand more money, which they will get because, as we know, the dock workers are the mob. And during World War II, Operation Overlord was put into play because of the fear of the mafia. I should prove that. Then we're going to get out of here. I'm going to keep it short today. Still have a busy, busy day. I was going to show Operation Storm Fury, but that's just a joke. Operation Underworld is not. Wow. I should have been showing that, show how Wikipedia doesn't want you to see the Operation Underworld. Operation Storm Fury was how government claims to have tried to seed clouds in the 1950s and 60s and up to 1971 when they gave up because it just wasn't working. It wasn't worth it. But Operation Underworld, it all started on the shipping docks when one of a ship that was more fancy and faster than the Titanic sank in New York Harbor, and they were convinced that the mafia was behind it. So that all led to the Jewish mob and the Italian mob taking over the 5 families in running it and saying, the government went to them and said, will you make sure the mob doesn't attack us because we're at war? And they said, what's in it for us? And they said, well, we'll let Lucky Luciano out of prison, even though he was found to, kidnapping women and turning them into prostitutes to make a living. They still let him go and set him up with the Operation Underworld. That's what this is. It's all mob. Which is why in 1943, all of a sudden, Italy was friends with the Nazis, and then all of a sudden they were not. Does have something to do with the Nazis telling them, as it was that time period, a battle for who was going to be white. Eugenics was the main reason for it. Eugenics was taught by the United States to Germany, to the other countries, and they didn't believe in Jesus Christ. They didn't believe in anything except social Darwinism. So why wouldn't they each think, why are the Europeans special? We kick ass. And so everybody gunned up and decided to play worldwide Risk. And when it turned out that Japan was going to win, the white countries of the world, Russia, France, Canada,
Made a
and
pact, huh?
and the United States said, we can't do that. So they took the communists, and they had been working with Chiang Kai-shek. Part of the Big Four was Roosevelt, Stalin, Chiang Kai-shek, and there was one other, Churchill. You might have heard of him. They all, were going like, we are going to attack Russia, and they did it on the days when supposedly we had dropped the atomic bombs. They all turned on them that week in 45. August 6th and the 9th were involved in that. And so it was Russia, Great Britain, the United States, and their, friends. We bring along Canada and New Zealand because that way they can go, we helped, mate, But that's it. The history's written. RJ, we've laid everything out for them. Just gave them a short review. And guess what? You're not going to be raptured this year, next year, or the year after. You're in for a bankrupt country. This country that you love, that you still stand up and go, I love you. They don't love you. And they're going to make a point of showing that you shouldn't have loved them in your lifetime. Not today, not tomorrow. Probably on that next midterm election when the Michelle Obama Express starts rolling to become president. Anything you want to close with, RJ?
Yeah, these are interesting times. Yeah.
These are interesting times. RJ, I'd like to get a hold of Sergio sometime. I think we both have talked, and we'd like to talk to you, Sergio. We appreciate your good work. We do have some questions. But in the meantime, we want everybody to remember it's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We are trying to prove that we are 1 called, 2 chosen, and 3 being faithful to warn you and have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame.